We're looking at the pace car now in Group 2. Smaller bore production cars. Could have a great race on our hands here.
Boy, we sure could. It was a good race yesterday, and you know, we have some beautiful cars in this race. These Elvas are one of my favorite. Elva Couriers. They're on the pole position, first two positions here. Beautiful cars, and they raced very close yesterday.
Your pole cars, the 80 car Joe Gordon and the 58 car Gary Silcox. Who are you looking at in this smaller bore production race?
Well, that would be those two, one of those two guys. Now, Joe Gordon in the yellow Elva is the husband of the club president, Eva Gordon. So everybody better treat him with respect.
You better behave yourself or I'll tell my wife.
But there's some fun guys in here. Gee, the Porsche number 19, which is in the second row, Ted Rogers, he raced here at Deer Park for the Easter egg race in 1965. He's been around quite a while, in and out of racing, but he's been around a lot in the last few years and has quite a background.
All these 1960s cars, we had a 70 Fiat, that was a late scratch, but we've got a couple MGAs out there, Alfa Romeo Giulia, and then, as you said, the Couriers, the 1963 Elvas, both Mark IIIs, and the Elva Couriers by Joe Gordon and Gary Silcox. Looks like the pace car is off and just about ready to go here. Quite a different sound of these cars, huh?
Yeah, they're smaller engines, but you know, these are all production cars, supposedly. At one point they were.
So it's Gary Silcox with the early lead in his 63 Elva.
It's a nice mix of cars in there. That white and red Alfa, you can see the back tail of it just going around the turn. Is guy was driving a red one in the last car, in the last race.
Again, you're looking at them coming off that long straightaway, this 2.25 mile long course here at the Spokane County Raceway here in Airway Heights. And they're ready to do some gambling. They can go over to Northern Quest, so you do some gambling on the course as well. They've got the DNA for it, and you know, it's a fun course. They're having a lot of fun out there so far. So it's 58. Gary Silcox with the lead up in front of Joe Gordon. They are neck and neck right now, 58 and 80.
Should be pretty well matched throughout the day. See, Ted Rogers in that Porsche is in pretty good shape.
We're hoping to see the 69 Lotus driven by Donald Stern. He would have been the man to beat, presumably. His car, we understand, was just pulled out of the pits, and looks like he will not be racing today, right, so that's unfortunate.
Sorry, yeah, he was trying hard to get it going, but he would have been right with these guys.
You'll have to watch this one as a spectator. And so far, again, it's Silcox in the 58 and Gordon in the 80. And again, better treat Gordon right?
Right. Even though it's funny, Silcox is the club secretary, so you know, he could write down what he wants to in the next meeting. So we'll see what happens here. I will be at a club meeting this Tuesday, and they'll be there at the head table. Joe is also the competition co-chairman.
So we'll have 5 morning races here. Groups 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we've seen production cars, we've seen open wheel, we've seen Formula. I mean, the exhibition class, and again, for you, whether you're a racing enthusiast or like to see the classic cars, I mean, you can't beat what you're going to see out here at the Raceway. We've got a tight race between 2 and 3 right now.
Here comes the Lotus Elan.
That's the 50 car driven by Ron Hornig.
Yeah, he did quite well yesterday too. Now this is interesting. But you notice how quickly he appeared? He was, he was in the top group, but he wasn't that close last lap. He made up a lot of distance.
So it's Silcox, Gordon, and Hornig right now. 1, 2, and 3. See Silcox, and 119 now on the track. So we'll get a look at Donald Stern and his 69 Lotus Super 7.
This is a fun car. It's a fast car. And it'll be interesting to see what he does out there. He doesn't have he's not fast enough to unlap himself, but he can, could be interesting to see who he's racing with.
Silcox trying to create some separation between him and the 80 car, Joe Gordon, and Ron Hornig, the 50 car. A three-horse race right now, and look out.
What a move there.
It's got all the makings of a good finish here so far between those front three cars. Lotus and a couple of Alva Couriers.
It sure did, you know, but Hornig's move there was very authoritative. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually starts pulling. Gee, that was a nice move. He got around those two Couriers pretty quickly.
Looks like they'll be able to lap their first car today too, right from our vantage point, but that of course being Donald Stern. Well, Stern's picked the right spot to join this race, hasn't he?
Interesting. Yes, it could.
Again, Stern would be a couple laps behind, but he could feel like a winner out there if he's able to hold these guys off.
You bet. Well, this is fun. That's kind of what we expected to see going in.
So Stern in the 119 car came out late for reasons unknown, had some car problems, but he did and his crew were able to get that car back out here. And he'll be right in the thick of this as Ron Hornig now with the lead, overtaking both Gary Silcox and Joe Gordon.
Whatever was wrong with his Lotus, it evidently wasn't a performance issue. He's running fast.
Absolutely, trying to hold off, and you know that's exactly what all of these guys want out there on the track, right? They all want to be able to see just a competitive race, whether you are in first place or in last place, as Stern is right now. It's going to feel like a different race out there for him.
Oh, sure. You know what? You don't want to be by yourself out there, really. What people will say is, I don't have anybody to race with. You know, if there's no car that's really with your speed, you can get by yourself out there. Oops, there's one of the MGAs off. Too bad. It's nice to see those cars out. I mean, out in the course, not out of the race.
There's two MGAs out there, both 1960 MGAs, Hal Hamilton and Richard Childs, a 60 and 51 car. We can't quite make out, but it looks like it might be the 60 car, Richard Childs.
I think that's the case.
No caution, he's far off enough of the track, I believe, and they'll let him race.
Well, in racing they are, even though that land still looks like it's got a little more than the others, but boy, not much. They're close.
The 1965 Lotus Elan S2, driven by Ron Hornig. What can you tell us about Ron?
I wish I could say more about him. I don't know much about Ron, to tell you the truth. There's a lot of people out here. I've seen him race that car, though, and I know he's a good driver and with a good car.
It's a pretty good combination.
Sure.
Good car, good driver.
Some people get really involved in the club like Silcox and Gordon, and others don't. You know, it just depends on your personality, your interests. It takes everybody to make a club, though. We're awfully glad that people come out with their cars, whether they're club officers or not, needless to say. SOVREN's one of the few clubs that has a woman president. And knowing Eva, I don't think her husband tells her what to do. She runs the club the way she wants.
She runs the shop in that operation.
Yeah, and she's doing a great job.
Nice thing is, too, you can be a lifelong fan of the sport, or some people find this very late in the game, don't they?
You know, that's true. A lot of people like vintage racing because of the fact that the cars are so different. You know, what you see on the surface is what's underneath. And you know, I like NASCAR too, but you know, it's just like a skin of a car over something that may have not much to do with the car that it represents. but these are the real cars.
And there are some real cars out here. Again, the Lotus Elan, the Couriers. We've got a Datsun Fairlady out there. We've got a 62 Porsche. A few MGs, 2 MGAs, an MGB in 1964. And then the Alfa Romeo, which I know you're a big fan of as well.
Yes, that's right. I've got one myself. It's not as fast as these, nor am I as good a driver, but it's fun to have something you can identify with.
What kind of Alfa you have?
Oh, I've got a GTV, and we'll see GTVs in the next race. However, mine's too new to, it's not a new car, but it's too new to be eligible. You have to be, a production car has to be made in 1972 and earlier to race with SOVREN. Purpose-built cars, of course, race cars can be later. Just until last year, the cutoff was 1969, so you still see a lot of cars are 69 and earlier, and we'll get more newer cars.
Well, they've made their way past that straightaway, and around the turn they come. Again, Ron Hornig, Gary Silcox, Joe Gordon, all part of that lead pack there. And Donald Stern in the mix. He was the pole sitter, I believe, and had problems with his car coming out, but has come back in now to race that car. He is the car nearest, we'll put it that way. He is the car nearest to Ron Hornig in that 50 car.
Boy, these two Elvas are having a great race, though. Heck of a race.
Yeah, the two Elva Couriers, Gary Silcox and Joe Gordon, 58 and 80 respectively. They'll have a fun race out there. As you said, you want to have somebody out there to race, and that's exactly two evenly matched cars, and looks like two evenly matched drivers as well.
There aren't a lot of Couriers in the country, and we had one race last year, there were 5, and somebody, I believe somebody said that was like half of the ones that were in the whole country. Racing anyway.
Yeah. And there's Gordon trying to hold off Silcox. And there's Ron Hornig in his 65 Lotus. Well, if you were to go to a race in the 1960s, this is exactly what you'd be seeing.
Yeah, that's very true. Cars probably wouldn't look as nice. That's one thing when they were, when we were racing the cars that people drove on the streets and drove to work, they'd wash them, but these cars are really pretty immaculate because they know that people are going to be really looking at them here as representatives of that type of car, and they want them to look their best.
And of course, here in Airway Heights, in the Spokane area in 1960s, well, wasn't quite the same, was it?
Well,
probably some cattle grazing out there or something or other.
You'd imagine that was the case with some Air Force planes swooping low. If there was racing here, it was up in Deer Park, you know, at that airport. Mm-hmm. I was there at Deer Park in 1958 and 59 watching racing.
What differences have you seen between now and then?
Oh, gee whiz. The safety is the main thing. When I first started going to races, there were no roll bars and seatbelts were optional. People were out there racing wearing T-shirts, and you know, some kind of a weird helmet. But nobody got hurt around here anyway in those days. Cars are faster a lot. You know, the straightaway speed is not that much faster in a lot of cars, but the braking and handling is so much better, and dependability.
And again, but we have to stress that in these races, these vintage races, that whatever modifications you make to your car, they have to be authentic to the time. So in other words, you can't take something from the 1990s and put it in a 1960 car.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You better not. People out here, they got a passion for racing, they got a passion for their cars, but that passion has to be tempered with, you know, with the rules, or we'd have a sport that only the rich man can win, which is unfortunately the way it is in a lot of racing.
There's a 62 Porsche, Ted Rogers.
And Ted is a guy that raced at Deer Park in the 60s, not with that car, but he did, so he's a real veteran.
Well, you take the stickers off that thing and you've got a car ready for the road, huh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wouldn't mind taking that to work.
Get a little attention, though. You don't see a lot of them on the road, but
no.
You do see them.
There's the 119 car again, the 69 Lotus Super 7 driven by Donald Stern. Stern making his pass there on the 93 car, and the 1964 MGB by Rick Larner.
All the British cars out there. The Elvas are British.
Again, if not for the fact that we knew we were in Airway Heights, we could very well be in 1965 across the pond in the United Kingdom.
Well, they have some terrific vintage racing in the United Kingdom too. It's probably the best vintage racing in the world. You know, Spokane accepted is in Britain, where they have events where they recreate the whole vintage spirit. They have flyovers of World War II planes, and people dress in period costumes. The big difference there is that they are much more aggressive with their cars than we are, which I wouldn't like. I love these cars, and I don't want to see anything happen to them.
Not even a mark on these cars, not even a scratch.
You know, that's what you'd like to see at the end too.
There's the Triumph GT6, a 1966, driven by Bart Scott.
Anybody who had one of those cars in the day would know that this guy's done a heck of a job to keep that car running fast for 20 minutes, because those cars were notoriously unreliable.
And what a difference a couple minutes makes for Donald Stern in that 119 car, as we get a look at your leader in that Elan, the Ron Hornig car.
Oh, yeah.
But Donald, you know, he thought his day might just be done, and he's not only able to get back out there, but drive a great race so far.
He's doing a heck of a job. You know, it'd be interesting if they started evenly. And you don't know if his car is running quite right now even. So I'm eager to see him this afternoon too.
And there's Ron Hornig, the leader in the 1965 Lotus Elan S2. It was him, Silcox, and Gordon. Gordon and Silcox and the Elvas, the Elva Couriers. And now Hornig, the runaway winner here, or leader, I should say, so far.
You don't know. It's just like any other
know.
kind of racing. Boy, in the last lap, even. We saw that in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. Somebody, you know, had problems just in the very end of the race. So it can happen here, too. Even though they've gone this far in these kind of cars, they're probably going to make it.
Around that curve they go from that straightaway. We are now on the last lap here in Group 2, the smaller bore production cars led by Ron Hornig. That's Ted Rogers in his 62 Porsche, and still out there running the 19 car. Again, that could double up as a pace car at some point. The lines on the Porsche, it's just so consistent. You love that in the Porsches, don't you?
Yeah, you sure do. Absolutely. I've seen 1949 models running at vintage races in Monterey, and you know, they're still pretty much the same car. A little more of an upside down bathtub, but still the very good lines.
Ron Hornig in first, and the battle for second continues between those Elvas. Silcox in the 58, Gordon in the 80 car, and that is going to maybe go down to the wire. Right now it's Gordon with the lead, trying to hold off Silcox.
That switched several times.
These two just enjoying the ride out there today, and if you're going to make your move, now's the time to make it.
They almost did it. Boy, there's close. Ooh. I don't see any blue paint on that yellow car, though, so I think they avoided each other.
There is the checkered flag, and Ron Hornig, your winner in the 1965 Lotus Elan S2 in the 50 car. And Silcox and Gordon will finish 2 and 3.
Wow.
That was as close as it'll get. Joe Gordon holding off Gary Silcox, a couple of Elvas going down to the wire. What a finish between those two.
I'll be at the club meeting on Tuesday. It'll be interesting to see over the weekend who has won the most of those two and what kind of ribbing goes on.